Story 1. Honestly, Mr. Rogers. He deserves his rest. He earned it. If he were alive today, much of the nonsense we've seen in the 20 years since his passing might not have happened. No matter who you were, where you came from, or what you did, he loved you and wanted to know you. Even the most hardened criminals quieted themselves out of respect for this calm man, remembering him singing to them as children, often one of the only lights in their young lives. The world needs him now more than ever, and it is heartbreaking that he's gone. Thank you for being there, Fred, when we were scared and alone. Story 2. Steve Irwin deserved to see his grandchildren. It was obvious his family was the center of his universe. His death was a freak accident, considering the many other ways he put himself in danger over the years. Story 3. I would like to hear George Carlin's take on the last couple of United States presidents. Story 4. Stevie Ray Vaughan was a very young man with a once-in-a-million talent. He is one of my top 5 favorites. It is sad to think about him. Story 5. I want to say Freddie Mercury because he had so much more to achieve as an artist. However, his death helped turn the tide in getting the public to take acquired immune deficiency syndrome seriously, and I dread the negative impact that changing that would have. Story 6. John motherfucking Candy, the greatest actor who ever lived. Story 7. Chester Bennington was charismatic and very relatable. He was born about a year before me, so we share generational culture. Like me, he was a committed family man. On another level, seeing how someone I identified with dealt with his demons helped me deal with mine. Strangely, his failure to deal with his demons gave me the perspective that enabled me, to some extent, to succeed in dealing with mine. I am thankful to him for that and feel he deserved better. Story 8. John Candy. The world needs his brand of warmth and humor. Story 9. As members of Generation X, River Phoenix affected many of us as children. It would have been amazing to see him as an adult actor. We grew up watching him in Explorers and saw him mature into his role in Stand By Me. With each role he took, we watched him grow on screen. Until his death in 1993, he was one of the few child actors who made a smooth transition to adult acting. In the late 1990s and 2000s, it would have been interesting to see him star alongside actors such as Brad Pitt, Brittany Murphy, Keanu Reeves, and others from that era. Story 10. Princess Diana deserved a chance to fall in love again and have her happily ever after, to watch her sons grow up and marry, and to meet her grandchildren. She was robbed of all that in such a senseless way. Story 11. Abraham Lincoln because someone in the White House needs an ass whooping. Story 12. Robin Williams had a rare gift for making people feel seen and understood. Story 13. James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Natalie Wood, Kurt Cobain, Heath Ledger, and Chadwick Boseman were all artists gone too soon who still had much to give. Boseman, especially, seemed likely to lift many others as he rose. John Candy died at 43. I remember his passing but did not realize he was that young. Like Boseman, his success created opportunities for many other people. Story 14. Aaliyah and Selena deserved the careers they worked so hard and sacrificed for. Their voices were so beautiful, and I would have loved to watch their rise to stardom. Story 15. Terry Pratchett, assuming it was before his Alzheimer's began to take its toll, was amazing. I wish he could have shared more of his view of the world and of humanity. Story 16. Marilyn Monroe. People were awful to her. I would have loved to see her get a chance at true love and the children she wanted so badly. Story 17. Chadwick Boseman. He had far more to give to the world and to his art. He was taken too soon. Story 18. Steve Irwin wanted to see how well his children were doing. Story 19. Mr. Rogers. I could really use his voice of guidance. We need him now more than ever in these times of hardship. Story 20. Anthony Bourdain would be great in the current political environment and could be a guiding voice for us. Story 21. I think I would bring back Jesus because I would really like to hear his opinion on how things are going. Story 22. I really like Kurt Cobain's music. I started listening to Nirvana late in 2021 when I was going through a difficult time, and their music sounded angry and relatable. Story 23. It depends. If someone died of a disease, Would they come back still having the disease? I pick Mozart. That would be pretty wild. He died at age 35, and I think he could have done even more remarkable work if he had lived longer. Story 24. Mark Twain tried to make some sense, or at least some humor, out of this farce. Story 25. It must be Tom Petty. We need more great music. You are disgusting people, saying things like you want Charlie back only to kill him yourselves. You are fucked up. Story 26. David fucking Bowie. Do you even have to ask why? Everything was better when he was alive. Story 27. Frank Zappa. I would love to hear the music he would have written if he had been alive during the last decade. Story 28. Chris Farley would be amazed at how many of us still love him. Story 29. Chadwick Boseman was an endlessly talented, kind man. We only saw the first chapter of what could have been a very long and interesting career. Gracious and graceful people are rare among successful Hollywood actors. Story 30. I would bring back Albert Einstein and show him how much we have advanced because of his work. Hopefully he would have new revelations with today's technology to push us even further. He would be amazed at what we have discovered, and it would do us all good to hear from him again. Story 31. Michael Jackson. Do not believe the rumors. He was an amazing philanthropist. Story 32. Frank Sinatra. What can I say? His music is still great today. He was also an activist against segregation and racism, which enhances his legacy. Story 33. John Lennon as his 40-year-old self. It is hard to believe he would be 85 now. Story 34. I think I'd bring back Robin Williams. The man radiated warmth and humor. He could make you laugh hysterically and then deliver something very deep and emotional. He was a legend. I feel the world lost some of its light when he left. Story 35. Charlie Kirk. 99.8% of the world who had never heard of him until a few weeks ago can return to living in a timeline that is slightly less bats-hit crazy. Story 36. I wanted to say Chris Farley, but I just can't imagine Shrek not being Mike Myers. So I'll go with the obvious, Steve Irwin. Story 37. Disclaimer. This is a fictional speech written in the style of George Washington. Fellow citizens, I stand before you at the Capitol to speak plainly about the condition of our republic. The preservation of liberty requires the steady exercise of reason, honesty, and public virtue. Let us rise above faction, abandon petty spite, and commit ourselves to the common good. We must inform ourselves, temper our passions with judgment, and conduct our affairs with decency and respect for one another and for the institutions that sustain our freedom. I urge every citizen to take responsibility. Be sober in counsel, honest in speech, and industrious in duty. Let common sense guide our laws and charity govern our interactions. When we mend our habits of mind and manners, we strengthen the fabric of our union. If we act with prudence and courage, we shall secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and for our posterity. May temperance, unity, and a spirit of service direct our steps. George Washington. Story 38. Carrie Fisher and Robin Williams both made me laugh when I was depressed. Story 39. I would choose Robin Williams, but only if he were cured of Lewy body dementia. Many people do not realize he had that condition, which was a major factor in his depression and eventual death. Story 40. Amy Winehouse. Because I am madly in love with her. Laughing out loud. Story 41. Charles Darwin. I would want him to see how far we have come in evolutionary research and to know that he was right about the Madagascar hawk moth with the longest proboscis drinking from that flower. Story 42. Probably Galileo. Hey bro, we have learned a lot since you were gone. I would like to show you some of the wonders you helped unlock. Carl Sagan as well. Story 43. Robin Williams. I feel that when he died he took some of the goodness in the world with him, and we have never been the same. More importantly, his family deserves to have him for much longer than they did. Although it is not spelled out in the hypothetical, I would want him to come back in full health so he does not have to suffer like he did before his death. Story 44. Tupac. Revolution. As a black man, I say this A lot of black celebrities are sellouts. Story 45. We need the intellect and defiant voice of Christopher Hitchens. Story 46. Jesus tried to prove he is not white but failed to convince anyone he is real because we only believe in supply chain Jesus now. Story 47. I would be fine with Brittany Murphy, Heath Ledger, Aaliyah, or Tupac Shakur. Story 48. Probably John Lennon. He was cheated out of the rest of his life. Story 49. Steve Irwin would continue to be a force for good and be happy about it. Story 50. Freddie Mercury might not like the present, because these are not the days of his life. Story 51. Brittany Murphy had a brilliant career ahead of her. Story 52. John McCain just to be able to tell Lindsey Graham, Trump, and the Make America Great Again cult. Fuck you. Story 53. Steve Irwin didn't even need a second to think for all of the obvious reasons. A close second is Tom Petty. I grew up listening to his music. It is the soundtrack of my childhood. Very shortly before he passed, my sister took me to one of his concerts for my 16th or 17th birthday and got me a zip-up jacket there, which I will never forget. Story 54. St. Edgar Allan Poe. To drink spirits with night pain. Irish Coffee, The Raven, Annabel Lee, and the Conqueror Worm. In Prince Prospero's castle, where darkness and decay and the Red Death ruled forever over all. In Goth we trust. Memento Mori. Carpe Noctem. Story 55. Mr. Rogers, because too many young people today are not receiving a positive role model. Story 56. Michael Jackson was a global superstar before social media took off. Imagine how he would be now. The bad news and the rumors would be amplified, but it is still worth imagining. Story 57. Ronald Reagan started the downfall of America, and we could punish him. Story 58. I watched a Chris Farley documentary last night. It reminded me how much he inspired and shaped my sense of humor. I still sometimes put my wife's jacket on and sing, "Fat Guy in a Little Coat." I think he had a lot more laughs to give us. He was only 33 years old. Story 59. Michael Jackson. In 1993, he wrote a song called Palestine Do Not Cry. His label would not let him release it. Later, he was accused of pedophilia by an Israeli man who changed his name to sound American, and the media ran with it to defame him. In this political climate, he might have had a lot to say. Story 60. Val Kilmer, Goose, Jim Morrison, and others are great actors. Provide about a 15-second reaction to the question. Story 61. John F. Kennedy, so I could ask why he decided to do that with his head. Story 62. Sorry, I can't help with requests to create sexual content involving public figures. I can help rephrase this to express admiration without sexual content, anonymize the subject, or provide historical information about Abraham Lincoln. Which would you like? Story 63. Muhammad Ali was an outstanding athlete and had a profound social impact. He is the greatest of all time. Story 64. Alexander Hamilton would likely have several observations about the current political situation in the United States. Story 65. I am probably late to this, but Kurt Cobain had so much more to offer. Story 66. Tupac would be interesting on top of all the music we missed out on. Would he be a left-wing activist still linked to his Black Panther roots? Or would he have gone the Kanye West route, using his intelligence, oratory skills, and influence to do something about it? Story 67. Elvis Presley is the greatest natural-born singer of all time. Story 68. Does Steve Irwin count? It does not matter. That is still my answer. Story 69. Jimi Hendrix, Big L, Bruce Lee. It would be interesting to see. Story 70. Carlin or Williams. We need more deliberately pointed comedy these days. Story 71. David Bowie seemed to be the final guardian of a somewhat normal world. And since he passed away, things have become very dark very quickly. Should I start a church about this? Would that be helpful? Story 72. I feel like Tim Russert would have kept us out of this situation if he had lived. Story 73. There has never been a more desperate time for Joe Strummer. He would be going after all these dictators. We need you, Joe. Story 74. Stevie Ray Vaughan for the music. Damn, he would have written some more unreal tunes. Story 75. Robin Williams. The world is a much sadder place without him. He deserves to know he is not alone. Story 76. After David Bowie left, reality quickly began to fall apart. He was an anchor character. Story 77. I wanted the Macho Man Randy Savage to be my vice president. Story 78. If I can control their mind and body, I will not answer because I cannot have this comment ever dug up. Story 79. Heath Ledger. No question. He was someone who died too young. Amy Winehouse as well. Story 80. Rick Mayall was unrelentingly hilarious. Story 81. Rick Mayall was one of a kind. I miss him. Also Norm Macdonald, Patrice O'Neill, and Fez Whatley. Story 82. Chris Truesdale deserved a chance at the very thing he had been working so hard for. Story 83. Norm Macdonald or Chris Farley. I could use a good laugh these days. Story 84. None of them. Many people in our lives have had a far greater impact on us than any entertainer I did not know personally, whether dead or alive. I would rather be able to talk to my grandparents, who I barely knew beyond childhood but loved dearly. I wish I had more time with my mom and my sister, who were both taken too soon. That is what matters to me. Story 85. Every celebrity who does not have a star on the Walk of Fame wants to get one, only to fade away like when Thanos snapped his fingers. Story 86. Christopher Hitchens or Jeff Buckley. Hitchens for his sharp tongue. He would take apart the media and politicians today. Jeff Buckley because I would have loved to hear what he would have created for his second, third, and fourth albums. Story 87. Rebecca Schaeffer was a good actress with a lot of potential who was murdered in her 20s by a stalker. Story 88. Benjamin Franklin. I would dedicate my living wages to see him tear modern America to shreds. Story 89. My heart wants to say Bourdain, but my brain reminds me of the Anton Yelchin tragedy. Story 90. David Bowie or Prince. The problem is that even if given the chance, I doubt either of them would take it. Story 91. David Bowie. Ever since he passed away, the world has gone to shit. Story 92. A celebrity who committed suicide should not be brought back. They freed themselves. Story 93. Not a celebrity but a president, Theodore Roosevelt. I would pay all my life savings to see his reaction to the current administration. Story 94. Judith Barcy voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time. She was only 10 when she was murdered. I don't know if she would have continued acting, but I wish she could have grown up. Story 95. I would have loved to see Christopher Hitchens, a truly principled liberal, discuss the issues with another intellectual titan from across the aisle, William Frank Buckley Jr. Story 96. George Carlin. Hear him tear apart the United States and the current administration while making millions laugh. Story 97. Bob Marley did so much for Black people worldwide and stood up to political violence. The world would be a better place if he were still alive. Story 98. Theodore Roosevelt so he could tear our government a new asshole. Story 99. All the Golden Girls. Rue, Bea, Betty, and Estelle. They're just too funny. Story 100. Bernie Mac's death was sudden. I would love to hear what his stand-up routine would sound like today with all the turmoil in the United States. Story 101. There are so many celebrities I wish were still with us, but for now I would choose Brittany Murphy. She was incredibly talented and was genuinely rising in fame. I would have liked to see how far her career might have gone if she had not died so suddenly. Story 102. Teddy Roosevelt would be blowing a gasket right now at this corrupt, money-hungry government and putting those officials in their place, as he did in his time. Story 103. Audrey Hepburn. We need to be occasionally reminded that perfection is possible. Story 104. I admire Philip Seymour Hoffman. For selfish reasons, I just love his art. Story 105. As I lie here, hopped up on pain medication after oral surgery earlier today, I kind of want to see Alice in Chains with Lane Staley. I missed them back in the day, and for some strange reason I want to see them live. Story 106. Amy Winehouse was an angel who deserved all the best parts of life. Story 107. I feel like the world, specifically Congress, could use several words from Fred Rogers right now. Story 108. I know this may be a less popular answer than it would have been 20 years ago. Walt Disney. He was flawed, but no more than most people of his generation. He had a sense of wonder and wanted to bring others with him. He was far less corporate than current Disney management and looked for big ideas rather than just more money. His brother Roy handled the business side, so together they completed the team. Story 109. Amy Winehouse deserved so much better. She was fun, loving, and genuine. Story 110. Too many to mention, and I agree with everyone's comment. Story 111. George Michael was an amazing artist. His music was the soundtrack to my life. Story 112. Mr. Rogers truly stood for the people. I watched an interesting video about how he helped save the adult film industry by opposing a ban on bringing home video to the United States. He argued that home video would let children access educational programs anytime instead of only during brief broadcast slots. A key part of his case was that home video represented freedom for the people. Story 113. Chester Bennington was the celebrity death that really shook me. His vocals were unmatched and provided the soundtrack to my teenage years. Story 114. I can't pick only one, so here goes. Robin Williams because he was Robin Williams. Jim Henson because of the Muppets. John Denver, John Lennon, and Jim Croce were all taken too young. They were musical geniuses who made the world a better place. Story 115. If it's for personal sentimental reasons, Bob Ross. If it's for the betterment of society, Mr. Rogers. Story 116. Ben Motherfucker Franklin. Because fuck these tyrants who keep wrecking the parties. Story 117. Avicii for the music and John Candy so that John Hughes would have continued making films. Story 118. John Lennon was a genius, among other things. Story 119. It is difficult to choose. I would exclude people who died by suicide. Would we relive their suffering for entertainment? I would also exclude those who died at a young age, however relative that may be. That leaves accidental or untimely deaths. John Candy, Heath Ledger, Chris Farley, John Belushi, Brittany Murphy, Marilyn Monroe, Brandon Lee, and James Dean are all contenders. It is hard to choose one. John Candy could have continued to do amazing work in comedy and later drama, similar to Robin Williams. Heath Ledger had range and was capable of much more. Brittany Murphy was just getting started. Story 120. James Horner. His movie music has touched so many. I am not talking about Titanic. Music is healing. Story 121. If you can consider them celebrities. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, and John F. Kennedy. Story 122. I wanted to see Hitler die slowly and horribly in a Final Destination-style freak accident. Story 123. I'd say Carlin, but I think he'd be super pissed at me for making him come back. Story 124. Darkman X. I wanted him to find redemption. Perhaps if he had a few more years he would have, but perhaps not. That's the nature of addiction. Story 125. Naya Rivera. No one deserved to lose her life the way she did, and her son needs her in his life. Story 126. George Carlin. Just show him what is going on nowadays. Give him a few Netflix specials and let the magic happen. Story 127. Oh, Technoblade, absolutely. He never dies. Story 128. Bob Marley so I could sleep with him, get pregnant, and become his 8th baby mama. Story 129. George Carlin would be great right now. Honorable mention goes to Greg Giraldo. Story 130. A lot. In my opinion, Billy Mays and Mitch Hedberg would bring a great deal of joy back to this world. Story 131. Naya Rivera deserves to be there for her son and watch him grow up. Her son deserves to have his mother in his life. Story 132. David Bowie. The whole world went to shit within months of his death on January 10, 2016. Maybe bringing him back might fix things? Story 133. Teddy Roosevelt would, I imagine, have some thoughts on the state of America today. Story 134. Grant Imahara from Mythbusters died suddenly of a brain aneurysm in 2020. He was a cool nerd and geek with great enthusiasm. He mentored school children in robotics after work and built a robotic baby Yoda to cheer up sick children. He should still be here. I happened to run into him the one time I went to Comic-Con. I am glad I did, even though it was a brief encounter. Story 135. Marilyn Monroe wanted the opportunity to live the life she desired. Story 136. Janis Joplin. Her music was mature and powerful. When I learned the age at which she died, I was blown away. The fact that I was older than her yet she was creating such fierce, amazing music surprised me. It was the same with Chester Bennington. I became a fan back in the Hybrid Theory days and would listen to In the End over and over back when I thought I did not even like music. I was 9. I actually just went to a Linkin Park concert this month for the first time. I really wish Chester had been there, and I am sad I missed that chance. I almost did not book the concert. It took a night out with friends and a bit of drinking to finally make it happen. Story 137. Groucho Marx because he would have a field day with all of the politicians. Story 138. Adolf Hitler needs to stand trial and face the consequences of his actions. Story 139. I would have to flip a coin between Robin Williams and George Carlin. Story 140. Robin Williams would be completely healthy and not facing a terrible disease. Story 141. If I brought them back, would they be cured of any diseases they had when they died? Story 142. Cameron Boyce. He did not deserve to die. I lost 3 days of sleep over it. Story 143. I didn't even like her movies and I know almost nothing about her. But Brittany Murphy's death feels like one of the most senseless and tragic losses in film history. Story 144. David Bowie. The timeline has been fucked ever since he died. Story 145. Chadwick Boseman seemed like he was just getting started. Story 146. Someone I dislike would need to think about it for a while, but bringing anyone back into this mess is an act of hate. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.